Hi, and welcome to an analysis of where we are. I'm Dan Stein, Federation for American Immigration Reform President. Happy to join you and talk about the situation we face both here in Washington and around the country. FAIR was founded many decades ago on the assumption that politicians would understand that in this modern, dangerous world, there are hundreds of millions of people who want to be on the move, who would like to improve their situation by moving to a country like the United States. We knew that during this period of time, Americans would be faced with many, many important issues regarding how to deter potentially unlimited waves of mass migration, illegal immigration, and others. And over the time that we've been working on this issue, it's become quite clear that there's a division of understanding about the importance of doing this. Now, over the years, we've made a lot of accomplishments. As an organization, we've been able to slow down the rising tide of those coming through the implementation of things like E-Verify for employers, major improvements in border security. We've been able to hold back a lot of really awful bills that would have increased dramatically the level of immigration. But we've always been animated by three basic questions that should guide immigration policy: who, how many, and how you enforce the rules. Who are you going to admit? Out of the hundreds of millions of people who'd like to move here tomorrow, who are those people who get to come? And then how many? Of so many contending people who want to come, who ultimately will get to come and how many will? In other words, with so many who want to come, how many can ultimately be let in any given period of time? Clearly, that is a subjective question. Many people have different points of view. FAIR has always said that it should be based on stabilizing US population size at around 300 million or so, which would mean about 300,000 people permanently settling net-wise into the United States. That would be pretty tough to do given the current levels now, but it's not impossible. And then the last question of how you enforce the rules. How we enforce the rules determines whether the first two questions can be answered. You really can't decide who or how many if people can't abide by the law. Now, respect for law is a cornerstone of citizenship, and many of us know that if the rule of law collapses, our borders collapse. With our borders collapsing, national self-determination disappears. As a nation, we have to be able to decide through Congress how we enforce these laws and whether or not we're going to be the ones who decide whether people come or not. Over the last 4 years, a lot of progress has been made. Many of the positions adopted in the Trump administration came from FAIR's original intellectual property, if you will, stuff that we developed, the ideas we developed over the previous 40. These are ideas that were implemented during the Trump administration, but in the end, they represent the American people's ideas. Many good policies that work. Now, the Biden administration is going to take a look at these policies, and it is our hope that they begin to understand that policies that actually work to deter illegal immigration and help manage the size of the flow, to prevent the competition from foreign labor, improperly admitted, or illegal labor, is important for the American people. In fact, at a time of extraordinarily high unemployment, 18 million plus Americans currently right now out of work, many looking for jobs, many more beyond that, it would seem prudent for the Biden administration to think very deeply and carefully about how it wants to approach undoing these immigration policies during a period of national economic crisis. Much attention has been paid to what is a political crisis. Is that political crisis legitimate or not? I will let you decide. One thing is clear, though, we face an economic crisis. That economic crisis means that many Americans have not only lost their jobs, but may have a very difficult time getting into a new and restructured economy. Over the last 30 years, many of the new jobs that have been created in this country have gone to foreign-born recent immigrants. Native Americans have been left out of the recovery. Part of that is because Native Americans were working in older and mature manufacturing. Many of the politicians who are now in political control have been those very same people who sold out the American manufacturing sector, sent it overseas, only to be replaced with globalized labor and the internationalization of the information industry. The net effect is that many of the things we were promised, the American people were promised to actually have happen by now, which is that Americans would be working in high value added, well-paying information jobs, free of aggressive international competition. That has not happened. And so naturally, there are a lot of political repercussions to what has been happening. And we would encourage the Biden administration not to be tone deaf to the very delicate area, the delicate situation this country is in right now. Well, unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world, and that means that FAIR has a lot that we have to work on in these next few years. Now, I don't need to tell you that it's more important than ever to be supporting the work of FAIR and some of our allied organizations that have worked so hard to bring common sense immigration policies to America, to the United States. Now, in the last 4 years, agreements have been negotiated with Northern Triangle countries to actually take back their own citizens or other people's citizens who are claiming refugee status from nearby countries. This, along with the agreement to remain in Mexico during the pendency of an asylum claim, have been enormous breakthroughs in discouraging caravans and other irregular migration patterns up through Central America and Mexico. Those agreements must be maintained and strengthened over the course of the next few years, not repealed, not renegotiated, not undone. Now, it's a fact that for every one organization like FAIR, there are on the other side literally 30 to 40 different organizations working on the other side of the issue. Make no mistake about it, even though we enjoy broad public support as a movement, many recent efforts to censor Americans have affected us as well. There have been efforts to rank down content, to minimize the proliferation of news outlets that cover the issue from our perspective. We've all seen this. Twitter, Facebook have banned political advertising during a key period of time before this election, made it difficult to get certain messages out. We all know that there is an asymmetry, if you will, in the way many of these platforms work. And so getting the news out is going to be a critical part of our mission in the course of this. But we have to recognize that we are also outgunned by the fact that George Soros and the Ford Foundation and MacArthur Foundation and a lot of these tech billionaires have helped to fund. Google is now putting money in to help DACA recipients pay their fees, even though this program is illegal and may be ultimately judged so by a judge in Texas. So you can see that they're weighing in on the other side. Now, all of these organizations on the other side also have professional assistance in that they have a very savvy group of people who understand the quickest and easiest way to dismantle those important and capable programs that have been implemented in the last 4 years. Those people are going to go to work immediately. They are proposing a series of proposals. They've made a proposal to the Biden administration that would be included in not only a comprehensive bill of some kind that would be presented in Congress, now Democrat controlled, but also a range of executive actions that they believe the president can do without any kind of congressional authority. And they're correct, based on the fact that the Biden administration knows how to operate to dismantle the system, and that they know how to work carefully with the ACLU and others to bring orchestrated litigation to then reach settlement agreements that work against the interests of immigration enforcement and control. We can expect to see a lot of these initiatives take place in the next few years, unless we work to stop it. And one of the things we saw during the Trump administration was the effort to use the courts to litigate, to try to block immigration policies they didn't like or enforcement that they didn't like. Now, if courts only entertain lawsuits that are designed to weaken immigration enforcement and refuse to entertain those cases that are designed to strengthen enforcement, claiming no legal standing, what happens to immigration enforcement and policy over time? It's weakened, there are loopholes, and they are exploited. We could expect to see more of these lawsuits brought, but this time they'll be orchestrated with the Biden administration. They will then reach settlements as well as cash settlements, which will then be redistributed to organizations on the other side of the issue. They will probably see a major financial bonanza. They will also tap those organizations for the talent they're going to hire within the administration, people who are blind to the reality that immigration policy can hurt Americans, that there are true interests that the American people have in better and sustained controls and limits. One of the problems we've always faced is that there is an inability of those people working on the other side to recognize that immigration has tangible impacts on the American people. No matter how high the unemployment rate goes, no matter how stagnant wages are, no matter how overcrowded our cities get, no matter how much environmental stress, additional crowding and development place on our communities and our environment, they want more and more and more. They see no practical limit to the number of people coming into the country. That was fine when they were not in control, but now they are in control. Now they have super control. And it is only through a vigilant effort to battle this every single day, that we're going to be able to stop and prevent them from making progress. Now, we've already heard from the opposition that they do not believe they want to propose a balanced package to Congress. They don't want to, say, add a few enforcement measures in or anything else to sweeten the deal. As Frank Sherry, longtime opponent of affairs, said, that ship has passed. They believe they're entitled to have a mass amnesty program through Congress for 15 to 20 million illegal aliens, fast-track them to citizenship. Kamala Harris has made a statement the other day that they want to fast-track those people here on temporary protected status, by the way, who were just promised short-term protection. She wants to accelerate their process to get citizenship, and they want to accelerate the process of DACA people getting citizenship. Essentially, it's a big power grab. The reality is that if the Democrats succeed in passing a bill of the kind they are talking about, they will dramatically change the political alignment of the United States for the next 50 years, make it almost impossible to consider the fact that we would ever have a two-party system anymore. It would be dominated by one political party, and I don't need to tell you which one. Maybe that's a desirable outcome if you're a Democrat. A robust two-party system is important. Using immigration as a way of enhancing your party's political base is a cynical manipulation of the purposes of immigration throughout the 21st century and not to be sustained. Now, if you were to give an amnesty to 15, 20 million people, you would also see tens of millions of petitions, tens of millions more petitions by relatives who want to join them. Now, what are their plans for that? Apparently, their plans are to simply increase the relative preference categories to accelerate the incoming number of people. What else are they planning to do? Well, through executive action, these organizations are making unlimited demands on the Biden administration. They are saying explicitly that undoing everything done in the previous 4 years is not enough. Undoing efforts that were made in the Trump administration to turn the ship around, not enough. They want much, much more. They expect him to push proposals that will accelerate the admission of asylum seekers, require the federal government to eventually catch them, which of course they don't support. If they file fraudulent claims, they call it catch and release, but there'll be no catch, and there'll be no recatching after you've released them, because they want Biden to actually make permanent his all suspension deportation policy, no deportations. They want to eliminate detention for most aliens, which is a major deterrent to fraudulent claims. Remember, civil detention means you're holding the alien until such time as their case is adjudicated, but an alien can always go back home to their home country. It's not like prison. They're being detained from entering the United States, is all it amounts to. Now, if they're fleeing bona fide political persecution, they should make that claim in the first safe country they come to. Biden will probably try to get rid of that and say, no, you can pass through 5 safe countries and make your claim in the United States, get released with a work document. This will dramatically increase the number of foreign workers in the labor force at a time when the United States can least afford it. One of the things that we're hoping we can do is try to accelerate an understanding of the cost of these kinds of programs. The minute you give people amnesty, they're going to be eligible for a full range of benefits, cost taxpayers billions of dollars. The minute you provide these programs, you have to have some kind of hearing to understand the cost of these things to taxpayers. Are they actually going to pass this kind of legislation without a true understanding of what it's going to cost future generations of Americans? Right now, the United States is not paying for the programs that it's already passed. Americans are not paying the taxes required to support the cost of the Great Society programs. And as a result, the country is running up massive debt, massive foreign debt, massive national debt, and massive deficits. Under the Biden administration, he's planning to push through a stimulus package, several $1 trillion stimulus package, then a Green New Deal package, trillions more. And then he wants an infrastructure package, which one would have to assume is going to be somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion, $500 billion and $1 trillion. And somewhere along the way, either this is going to have to be paid for, or the currency will have to be dramatically devalued, or there'll have to be some combination and some hyperinflation as a result. Fully expect to see inflation kicking back up in the Biden administration, which some people want to see happen. We don't particularly want to see that happen, but you can't just continue to print money and not expect the value of your currency to decline. So they're going to try to repeal the efforts made along the border to improve border security. He says he's not going to want to tear down the wall, but one has to assume that he will have allies who will want to tear down the 450 miles of wall that were built, if for no other reason as a symbolic gesture of defiance. There are many environmentalists who disagree with the construction of the wall, and we're sympathetic to the environmental sensitivity of that region. At the same time, if you add several 100 million people to our population over the course of this century, you're obviously having devastating environmental consequences for the people at large and the country at large, necessitating greater regulation to get people to conform to more rigid environmental standards internally. Nevertheless, you're still going to have rampant environmental damage. So all the focus on the environmental damage of the wall seems a little short-sighted when you look at the aggregate impacts of massive immigration, legal and illegal, that will obtain under the policies we're suspecting will be implemented by the Biden administration. So they want to focus on asylum. They want to reform it in a way that takes us back to the Obama days of caravans and massive fraud. They want to negotiate these agreements that will allow people to apply for asylum from outside the country, which in our view is not legal. They also want to, again, give amnesty for people given temporary protected status. Now, TPS was passed by Congress, temporary protected status. It was passed by Congress in 1990 for the purpose of providing short-term relief in order for the home country to reassert its ability to actually function. That means after an earthquake, if the country's government was not functioning properly, TPS was not a humanitarian relief program for the aliens. It was designed to help the host government recover its operations until it was safe to return people home or for them to return back home. What it has turned into is another massive immigration program. Politically, the Democrats never want to repeal TPS. They never want to end it, even though it's supposed to last no more than 18 months. It can be renewed by the president, but it's now going on for years, okay, for Salvadorans and Nicaraguans and Hondurans and a variety of other countries. The Trump administration tried to finally repeal it. Again, it got enjoined by the pernicious interference of courts that were entertaining suits improperly. Should ever have been entertained. They should have been bounced right out of court, but they were actually successful in getting injunctions and delays with the effort of trying to outlast the Trump administration. Well, TPS is now apparently going to be a platform for another big mass amnesty. So, when the camel's nose gets under the tent and we start giving mass amnesty to anybody, the Democrats are going to want to have a rolling amnesty. Now, what will that do? A rolling amnesty to anybody who comes, they'll eventually get a green card and fast track to citizenship. What does that mean? It means that we're about to set off the greatest tidal wave of immigration in the history of the country. This is after 40 years of the highest level of immigration in our country's history. People are trying to rebel against this. You see, people supported very much what the Trump administration was trying to do. People have for many, many years supported the efforts that FAIR has made to try to bring common sense reform back to this issue. How do we get a hearing in the Biden administration? How do we prevent them from doing something without properly understanding the consequences of what they're doing? How do we make them address the reality of what they're doing and what its probable impact will be in the short term and the long term? These are the challenges we face, but we can't do it alone, and we can't do it without you. So as we go through this phase in this process, we want you to know that we're going to need resources to conduct a national, robust public relations campaign, not just tomorrow, but on a daily basis throughout this administration. We're going to need to be on Capitol Hill, working with our allies and informing even those who don't agree with us of the consequences of what they're trying to do. We're going to have to find creative ways of putting pressure on the Biden administration to make them understand that for Americans who are out of work, Americans who are hurting, this is not the time to consider the kind of immigration promises, the outrageous and irresponsible immigration promises that Biden made during the campaign, not the time to implement these. The hazard we face is that giving away immigration benefits, in their view, is a cheap way to curry political favor. At a time when some of the other parts of their agenda are ambitious and will face resistance, Biden believes that by giving away immigration benefits, he will look good to his supporters and it won't cost them anything, or at least not cost the federal government directly anything right away, they believe. We have to guard against that process. We have to raise our voices in collective unison in opposition to what they're doing. Most importantly of all, though, you need to be aware of what they're doing. And this is going to be the greatest challenge of all. With a compliant national media, a media that's not sincerely interested in telling people the facts of what's being proposed on the Hill or what the administration is doing through executive order, you're not going to have the ability to raise your voice up and make a difference unless you have an organization like FAIR vigilantly watching on your behalf every day, 24 hours a day, and alerting you to the common sense changes that need to be made and helping you to work to oppose those things that are not in our public interest. So I ask you not to give up and not to be discouraged. I realize many of you may feel that we've had a setback here. There's no question that we have these challenges, but that's when we want to be at our best. That's when we want to be at our strongest. So I'm counting on you to stay informed and stay aware as we move through this very difficult phase. These next 6 months will be critical in trying to forestall disaster, and I know you'll stand with us to help make sure we help save America. I'm Dan Stein, and thanks for watching.